Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 as well. And by the way, on that Odyssey app, brand new feature we'd love for you to check out and use. And you might just hear yourself here on the show. About a third of the way down the screen, there's a little microphone. Just hit that. It's the voicemail button. You can leave us a message whenever it is that you have something to say. So do that. You don't have to wait for us to take calls. You can just let us know what you think whenever. But go ahead and hit that if you're listening in the free Odyssey app. And we'll roll from there. We start the show with something that's very not good. Dan Quinn got to the podium today and had news that was pretty shocking because I don't think any of us realized that this was happening. But the Commanders are likely going to be without one of their best offensive weapons for not just Sunday against New Orleans. Like, okay, I think they can beat New Orleans without this player, but probably the rest of the season, which opens up a whole different can of worms. That player is Noah Brown, who apparently suffered an internal injury of some pretty significant severity in the Tennessee Titans game. Here's Dan Quinn delivering the news earlier today.
Tough news on Noah. He's going to be out for a while. And so Brown. So he had a significant internal injury from the game. And so that's going to knock him out for a while. And we love him. And this play style, the identity of how he goes. And so that one hurts. He's been absolutely one of our glue guys. And after the game or during the game, between him and the medical staff, they did a really good job to address what was a serious injury. And, fortunately, he's going to be okay, but it's going to knock him out for a bit.
Say for a bit, is this season ending for him?
Yeah, we'll visit that later this week, but it's likely, heading that way.
So there's only 4 games remaining. So if they were to put him on IR, he'd miss the rest of the regular season. Theoretically, based off the IR timeline, he could return for the playoffs because you got to miss 4. But that all is due to, is he going to heal or not? I mean, this sounds very, very scary. And I'm sure at some point we'll get the greater story here, but thank God he's okay. And I think, let's do the thing we never want to do for just a moment, which is to remember that this is a ridiculously violent sport and that there are real consequences, short and long term, for playing it. And there is a just cruelty to it, an inhumane nature to football that we all accept, and it's easier for us watching it than it is for those playing it. And I think there's a couple of examples that really stick out of just like the bargain that we all choose here. And, this is not to say that I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad. I make my living talking about it. So I have accepted this. I just am going to acknowledge the reality. We accept it as consumers, and to maybe most importantly, the players accept it. If they don't want to play, they can opt out. The Seahawks had a player retire, I think their starting center retired 3 weeks ago. He's 26. He's I'm good. I don't need to do this anymore. And we've seen guys do that. If they make their first, round of money and they're this is good enough for me. I'm going to get out while I can, then that's their choice. So I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad, but there is this kind of just cruelty to it where if a guy gets hurt in practice, they just move the practice often. It's we're running this drill. We were running it at the 30, but now let's run it at the 20 because, so-and-so's down at the 30 and we need to, stay on schedule. It's damn, that's rough. Just keep on going, huh? And I feel like teams do that a little less than they used to, but that used to be absolutely how it goes. And the other one is this one's fresh in my mind because the Commanders were just on their bye. And so I was watching Red Zone this weekend. Dude, the second they get an injury on Red Zone, they go to another game as fast as they can. They do not want people realizing, the NFL speaking, does not want, and frankly, the folks at Red Zone, because they want people to be able to enjoy the experience, they do not want the constant reminders that dudes are dropping like flies all over the league. So it is a scary thing that Noah Brown is having to deal with, and I'm very, very glad on a human level that he is going to be okay, / is, to the extent he is right now, okay, and the medical staff did a good job. There is then the football element, the part where we just march on and, we don't look at Noah Brown as this dude who's going through this injury. It's okay, he's also a guy that has to be replaced because they're not going to move the Saints game on Sunday because Noah Brown went through this thing. They gotta suit up 53 and go, or 46, whoever they make inactive and go. And so where does that responsibility fall? because Brown on the season has been the third most targeted guy, the third most reception guy, the third most yardage guy, and he's tied with a bunch of other guys with one touchdown. His, perhaps a little more memorable than others, his one and only touchdown on the year is the Hail Mary. But he's got 35 catches for 453 yards, second to Terry and second to Ertz on the team in all those categories. Terry's got 9 touchdowns, which is actually second in the NFL. Ertz has 4. And then, Ertz is somewhere in the 50 catch range. Terry's higher than that. Ertz is beating Noah by about 70 yards receiving. And so it's an enormous hole to fix. He has been a guy that they can post up opposite Terry and say, hey, all right, we're going to stick McLaurin on the 3 receiver side and get Brown on some ISOs and use his bigger body to run these hitches and, some of the slants and things that we like to run with Terry against maybe a corner that's a lot worse than the guy who's covering Terry. And they've been able to hit that. He's also reliably gotten downfield vertically and drawn some PIs. He gets like one every other week where it's a 30, 40-yard gain. If you were to add the PI yardage into his yardage total, he'd probably have like close to 700 yards receiving on the year. I mean, he's drawn a lot of yardage for this team that doesn't go into his stat sheet. So replacing that is going to be really hard because the whole reason he's here is they don't have another guy. Jahan Dotson was supposed to be receiver 2. He bonked out for them in the spring in camp. They didn't like what they saw, and so they were able to get a 3rd-round pick for him, and thus they did. Luke McCaffrey is still young and developing, and I think Luke's the guy that I'm most intrigued by here to see, like, hey, what can he do? Because he ultimately is the closest in body type to Noah Brown. He's a bigger dude. He has played some on the outside this year and caught some of those tougher, like, hey, it's 3rd and 5. We need a 6-yard out. Like, let's throw the ball on Luke. And he's caught a couple of those. He doesn't have a ton of catches, but it seems like he's got some in big spots. So is he ready for a bigger role? Obviously, De'Ami Brown has kind of been the primary backup to Noah Brown, and his speed and his physicality has been helpful in certain spots, but he's a different kind of receiver. He's not a possession guy, so to speak. But he is a guy that can run some of the short stuff really well because he's bursty and quick, and he's not as reliable in terms of catching, although Noah's had his fair share of drops this year. But he's just not as reliable in some of that stuff. He's not as nuanced. He's not as gifted as Brown is in some of that, as Noah is De'Ami. But he also opens up your screen game and a couple other things more. And then the last guy is Olamide Zaccheaus. And what do we have in terms of, his ability to play outside versus continuing to use him in the slot? Anthony just gave me the one finger up. What for? So Anthony, what do you have in terms of was it related to the Noah Brown things or is it something else?
We have breaking news, Craig, and it is related to the Noah Brown situation.
All right, hold on. Let's get you all. Oh, you shared it to me on my phone, Anthony. I'm waiting for the breaking news to come through here.
I just sent it over to you.
Oh, I've got it. All right, hold on. Let's see. Breaking news. I still don't see it. This is terrible for both me and the audience. Oh,
should I just break it?
Oh no, I got it. I will break it. I actually wondered if they would do this the other day. With Noah Brown out for the season, or likely out for the season, Adam Schefter reporting the Commanders have claimed wide receiver KJ Osborne off waivers from the Patriots per his agents Drew Rosenhaus and Robert Bailey. So Osborne's a guy that's got a little bit of pop to him. He and the Patriots mutually parted ways earlier in the week. So that's how that ended for him. He also has got some big catches back in the day for the Vikings. Like, he was the number 2 to JJ, so he knows how to play off a star. All things considered, Anthony, that is a pretty freaking good job by Adam Peters. Because, KJ Osborne's like a real NFL receiver, and finding dudes like that on the waiver wire at this point feels hard. I do wonder, did he go to Ohio State? No, he was a University of Miami guy. I was like, did he go to Ohio State? Did he know what was going on? Did he ask to get out so he could go to Washington? But, good for him. He's going to go from catching passes to Drake May on a bad team to going and catching passes from Jaden Daniels on a good one. He's not the biggest dude. He's 5'11", 200, so he's not, the 6'2", 6'3", guy, but he was, with the Patriots, with the Vikings from 2020 to 2023. That's where he was drafted. And then he was in New England this past season. But he's got, 2,000 yards receiving almost on his career, 16 touchdowns. Like, he's a real NFL receiver. He's not a great NFL receiver, But he caught 48 balls for 540 yards last year. Like, that's pretty good. Hell of a lot better than anybody else you were going to get right now.
Yeah, and considering like he was in a room where you had Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, and he still was able to, have an impact on that Vikings offense led by Kirk Cousins. I think this is a good grab. And again, we just need, the huge question off the Noah thing was like, who's going to be that next guy? Like, who's going to be our wide receiver 2? And this guy, he's been a wide receiver 2. He's been a wide receiver 3. And I think he can come in here, he can make some noise.
I also wonder like how quickly they can get him up to speed. I'm looking real quick at other guys who are available, and there's some names available, including Damiere Bird's available, who I mentioned because he wound up here in the spring or in training camp, I think. So like you could go out and get someone like that. Michael Thomas, speaking of that would be fun. Former Saints, Ohio State guys, go get him just for this weekend. Hey, we'll teach you like 2 routes, bro. Just you're running route 1 or running route 2.
He wants payback on them too, man.
I'm sure he
still
does.
be subbing them.
I'm sure he does. I don't know that they want to bring that dude in this locker room.
No.
In fact, I'm sure they don't want to bring that dude in this locker room. Randall Cobb's doing SEC Network. Technically, he's available. I don't know. He's technically retired. Willie Snead. So like, there's some guys out there. Corey Davis was a high draft pick who didn't work out at all. So like, there's some guys out there that you've heard of, but what do we always say with Adam Peters? Like, he is going to find the right guy. And very clearly, he thinks that KJ Osborne is the most right guy they can get right now. I certainly feel like that's a good idea because also the thing with him, if I'm remembering his game correctly, he's got some good vertical speed. And so if you get that speed, that is super helpful to create space in this offense because that is the thing that I think Diami's got it, but he plays more like a power guy than a speed guy. Luke is not a burner. Like, he's not slow, but he's not a burner. He's not a take the top off guy. And OZ's more of like a quickness guy than he is a speed guy. So I think getting a guy like Osborne it feels like a good play. I'm going to freshen up on his stats and some of his like combine numbers and stuff here in the break, and we'll come back and continue to react to the breaking news. Again, earlier today, Dan Quinn sharing that Noah Brown is out likely for the season with an internal injury suffered during the Titans game. And breaking news just moments ago, the Commanders have signed or claimed after the Patriots waived him just a couple days ago, KJ Osborne to take his place. We're talking about it here on the Team 980. Coming up at 5 p.m. today, we will check in with JP Finley. He's got to be working hard right now as we got all this stuff going on with the Commanders, the signing that we just let you know about here on the Team 980. Commanders signing KJ Osborne from the Patriots to replace Noah Brown, as he is going to be out for likely the rest of the season. So we'll dive back into that in a second, dive into it again at 5 o'clock with JP Finley. Different JP I need to tell you about real quickly, though, because you can watch the Commanders with JP Flame from the Sports Junkies and our Burgundy and Gold game day crew, including Denton Day and Linnell Willingham, this Sunday at Center Pocket in Bowie. Burgundy and Gold pregame game day is live starting at 11 a.m. at the Center Pocket in Bowie. Okay, so KJ Osborne, who is he? He's the guy that's going to wind up replacing Noah Brown as the number 2 receiver, likely, because he's like a real NFL receiver. So, Anthony, we were just looking at it in the break. From a physical trait standpoint, ran a 4.48 40 at the combine back in 2020. So, really good speed, not elite speed, not low 4.4s, not 4.3s, but a 4.48, like you're moving. His 10-yard split was a 1.47. That's really good. So we're talking about a guy who can burst quickly, hopefully get off the line. He's explosive in some other metrics too. He's got 37.5-inch vertical, a 10.3 broad. Like 10.3 is pretty solid. And then he's a 4.35 20-yard shuttle guy and 18 bench reps for a wide receiver. So he's got some bulk to him too. I mean, 5'11", 200. Like, that's a stout guy who can move pretty quickly. He played at Buffalo back in the day. Now, remember Tyree Jackson? Big old quarterback.
Oh, yep.
That was there. So he played with him at Buffalo back in the day before transferring to his Miami for his senior year as a University of Miami. And he's been productive in the NFL. He barely played as a rookie. Didn't have any catches. But he started 9 games in 2021, and he had 50 catches for 655 yards, 7 touchdowns. He also, in 2022, his best season in terms of sheer catch volume, had 60 catches for 650. So 50 for 655, 60 for 650, had 5 touchdowns. And then last year, he started 12 games, had 540 yards on 48 receptions, had just 3 touchdowns. But he's clearly shown the ability to be a player. He can do some things this year, just not a part of what the Patriots are doing. Started 4 games, played in 7. He's only been targeted 18 times, has 7 catches for 57 yards and a touchdown. But you'd imagine if they're signing him, like they have a plan. And he's a guy who's got experience playing outside. He's got experience playing opposite a star in Justin Jefferson. And I'd imagine they know the guy. They've got to have a read on his character. Otherwise, they wouldn't bring him in. That's just not how Dan Quinn and Adam Peters operate. And so I think it's going to be really interesting to see how quickly they get him up to speed. And, like, can they get him a package of plays this weekend? Because we think about what they did with Noah Brown. Like, when he got here from Houston in the offseason, week 1, he didn't play that first week. It took him, they gave him like a full week. And he was coming back from an injury. But it felt like, hey, he was okay injury-wise. Let's just take it slow. We're now not in the part of the calendar where we can take things slow. And they might look at New Orleans and be like, we're just going to run the mess out of the ball. Let's give him 2 weeks. But this guy's in game shape. He was playing, he wasn't playing a ton in New England, obviously, but like he was practicing and he was a part of the Patriots' active roster. And now he's going to come in here, new verbiage, new everything, but this offense is pretty notoriously easy to learn. Hey, man, you're going to line up wide to the right. You got to make sure you know the formation right. And you got to know what your responsibility is. You're not going to have to learn a million checks, a million formations, a million everything. Like, pretty straightforward. And so maybe they give him the earpiece for this weekend, where he's one of the inactives. They give him the earpiece. He hears all the play calls. He watches it, and it's an extra week of learning, not to mention the extra practices he gets before Philly. But I tend to think that if they can get him on the field this weekend, they'll put Noah on IR. They'll put him in the roster spot, and off they'll go with him and his play volume getting larger week over week here over the final 4, and then hopefully for multiple games, but certainly at least one in the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely love the fact that we're bringing in an experienced receiver. I think the fact that he has played in big games, the fact that he has had a huge impact on an offense that's been dominant, and the fact that he has the ability to separate. I think that's what I'm most interested in seeing from KJ Osborne. The fact that, he can get some separation. You talked about his 10-yard shuttle, 25-yard shuttle. He is a quick guy. And I think what our receivers outside of, including Terry, a lot of our receivers have had struggles being able to, create some separation. So I think that will be good for, Jaden, and then also just for the offense in general.
You want to know what else we should root for? We should root for that Atlanta game to be played on a Saturday.
Ooh.
You want to know why?
Why?
You know what KJ Osborne's biggest game in his career was? Think
Was it on a
Minnesota.
Saturday?
Think Saturday. This one's going to hurt you. In that game against the Colts,
Oh.
where they came back and won. I was like, why?
When they were
why
up 28? When they
Yeah.
were up 28.
Yeah, and Minnesota won 39-36.
Yeah.
Which was 2 years ago this weekend. It was December 17th, 2022.
That would
He had
be insane.
16 targets, 10 catches, 157 yards. I was like, I know he had some monster game that stuck in my head, and it was a big game. I was like, did he have a monster playoff game? Nope.
Yeah.
He had a touchdown in their playoff game that year. But no, it was that Saturday game where he went for 157. And I think JJ also had a monster game that day. I mean, that was an absolutely
That was a crazy
silly football game. In that game, I forgot that Matt Ryan started that. Kirk went 34 for 54, 460, 4 touchdowns, 2 picks.
God dang.
Osborne, 10 for 157 and a touchdown. JJ, 12 for 123 and a touchdown. Thielen, 3 for 41 and a touchdown. Dalvin Cook, 4 catches, 95 yards, and that famous 64-yard screen touchdown. Kirk had 4 touchdowns, 4 different receivers. What a wacky bit that game was. And we're talking about it because one of the guys who caught a touchdown, the guy who got 157 yards that day, is KJ Osborne, the newest Washington Commander. When we get back, we are flipping gears from the Commanders. We're going to talk a little bit of Nationals. One, baseball is still in the news because Juan Soto and the deal and the trickle-down of all that. But then last night, all of a sudden, holy crap, the Nats have the number 1 pick in the draft. So Barry Svrluga wrote a great column earlier in the week on the Nats before that. We're also going to talk with Barry about the Nats getting the number 1 pick. So Svrluga next here on the Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980. It's our pleasure to welcome in columnist for the Washington Post, Barry Svrluga, talk a little baseball here as the winter meetings are set to kick off. Barry, how's it going, man?
Good, Craig. Hope you're doing well.
You as well. Things are good, all good over here. So you wrote a great column earlier in the week on the heels of the Juan Soto news, attacking it from the Nats angle. And then I want to talk to you as well about the Nats winning the number one pick as they win the draft lottery yesterday. Somewhere over in Southeast, all the Wizards folks are like, please let this run of luck continue. Please, for the love of God, let this run of luck continue. But we'll keep it on the baseball for now. When you saw the numbers and everything that came through with Soto, like, did your mind immediately go Nationals, or did it go more to the bigger picture of the sport that you love and have covered for so long?
Yeah, no, it went to the big picture because, I had years ago advocated for the Nationals to make a $500 million offer to Soto that would have extended him before he got to free agency, made him a National before they traded him to the Padres. We can debate that, but I thought the parameters of that deal at the time were really, really reasonable. As he got to free agency, I didn't think that $600 million was out of the question at all. That's 15 times $40 million a year. He's probably a $40 million a year player. And that seemed to be maybe the floor for what Scott Boras would get in free agency for Juan Soto. I cannot say that I saw $765 million over 15 years. And obviously Shohei Ohtani became a $700 million player last year. It's important to note that was a 10-year deal as opposed to a 15-year deal. So the AAV is much different. But at the time, you could say, Ohtani, you're getting two players, right? He couldn't pitch last year, but the expectation is that he's going to pitch. So if you're getting one of the best starting pitchers and you're getting one of the best hitters in the game and you're paying each of them $350 million, that doesn't seem that crazy. Juan Soto, and he is, don't get me wrong, he is my favorite hitter in the game. I think he is the best free agent in the sport. In a 20-year span, non-Ohtani division, I think he's really, really impactful. But he's also going to be a DH within the first 5, 6, 7 years of the deal. He's not a plus defender. So you're really paying him for the best 700 plate appearances he can give you over the course of 162 games. I didn't think 765 was on the table. Scott Boras proves that he can make his own market once again.
It is wild, and I guess it's because you have all the big hitters that were just getting in a bidding war, and eventually it was like, all right, this is enough. We're going to pick one. But then you have kind of the whole field, or the whole where the Nats, could have sat down at the table and then probably figured out we don't belong at this table. But to your point in the column, it wasn't so much about Soto, even if that was kind of the spur in writing it. It's that the Nats aren't not just paying Juan Soto; they're not paying anybody. And it has now gotten to a point, it seems, based off your column, that is no longer acceptable, 5 years removed from the 2019 World Series, where, as you point out near the end of your column, no team in baseball has lost more since the final out of that championship. So where are we with the Nationals on the spending front, from both kind of the learners' investment financially in their own financial status, and the practicality side of the team building, knowing that they started over after 2019?
I mean, I kind of wish I knew, I think that I know that the front office expects to be able to add players. That is a vague kind of blanket statement that they're going to try to get in on maybe the Christian Walkers of the world, the veteran first baseman from Arizona who would help this team. But it's also very apparent that they're not playing in the deep end here. They're not apparently in on the, frontline starting pitchers, Max Fried of Atlanta or Corbin Burns, who came up with Milwaukee and was traded to Baltimore for a season. That's the kind of player that I would think that because they have nobody on the books, their payroll is going to land. If they just fielded the team that they have now, it would be south of $50 million after all the arbitration numbers come out. That's really not responsible. You can have a young core, and the Nationals, when they first came to prominence, in 2011, 2012, they did it around mostly a young core that was Ryan Zimmerman and Steven Strasburg, and Bryce Harper came up in 2012, and Ian Desmond, and all those people that were on those first few division winners. They have a reasonable facsimile of that now. What they did then was add pieces. It wasn't just Jason Worth. It was Adam LaRoche. It was trading for Gio Gonzalez. It was bringing in big boys that can augment and help along the kids. And I think they owe it to that clubhouse, and they owe it to this fan base to do something that resembles that now. And the learners, I think it's a really interesting and important point that I don't, as much as I've played learnerologist over the years, I'm not sure I fully know or believe the answer. They put the team on the market. They then took the team off the market. Ted Leonsis has said, I expect to make a competitive bid this offseason, but I can't make them sell. If they don't want to sell, will they invest emotionally and financially into making this team a winner again? I can't answer that. Only they can.
Barry Svrluga, columnist, Washington Post, with us here on the Hoffman Show. When you look at their young prospects, like how do they compare? And I'm not saying like prospect for prospect, like Dylan Cruz for Bryce Harper, say, but in terms of the timeline, how does it match up to when they, for instance, brought in Worth, who's kind of the guy that is seen as the jumpstart? And is it even worth comparing, I guess would be the other question, because yes, that path worked for them once where they kind of surprised people with the Worth contract. And it's like, oh, I guess the Nats are ready to play now. And, everyone's like, oh, when are they going to hit their Jason Worth this time? Is that the formula, or is there a different way to go about it that looking for the Jason Worth is actually not the right way to be observing this process right now?
Again, I keep thinking it is the right way to think of it. It's important to remember that they got Jason Worth before they became a winner because they did overpay by 1 year, and one time the AAV, nobody else was offering Jason Worth 7 years. And so they stepped in and said, we do that. And that's why they got him, and kind of, was the stamp of legitimacy on what they were trying to build there. Now, he had a rough 2011 and the team did not win immediately, but in 2012, it all kind of clicked. I think they should be looking at that kind of deal. It's disappointing to me that they're not. And that's not to say that you have to go offer Pete Alonso, $200 million right now. I think it has to be the right player for their situation. And that means it's probably not an outfielder because they've got those positions covered. While they need a third baseman right now, they do think that Brady House is going to arrive at some point in 2025. So you don't want to block him there. What they really need are power hitting first baseman / DH types. And I think it's absolutely worth exploring in terms of their core. And if we whittle the core right now to maybe the top three being Dylan Cruz, James Wood, and CJ Abrams, I had an exec from another team late last season say, I don't see another team in baseball with a threesome of players that are under team control for the next 5 to 6 years that are as dynamic and have as high a ceiling as Wood, Cruz, and Abrams, which is a pretty powerful statement, which circles me back to thinking, if that's the case, if their upside is that good, how are you not augmenting the lineup to round it out and support those guys, both in the clubhouse and on the field?
So then the last piece of this, Barry, is the Nats get a gift last night. They win the draft lottery, and they're going to pick first next spring. We know that they obviously got a tremendous talent in Dylan Cruz. They got the number 1 pick last year. You could have gotten Paul Skeens, and we saw that's working for the Pirates. How significant is getting the number 1 pick in this upcoming draft, both based off what you know of the draft class and all the things we just talked about with the Nationals?
So I think it's huge, and they had only a 10-point-something% chance of getting it, so something broke their way, and they actually couldn't pick high last year. They were moved down to 10th because they had a number of high picks in a row. So I think it's significant. You always, Mike Rizzo is on the record as saying, it's a great position to be in. You have a chance to take who you think will be the best player. I also never want to do this again because I don't want to continue to have these bad teams that are in the draft lotteries that put you in that position. We know their history with number one picks. They picked Steven Strasburg in 2009 and Bryce Harper in 2010. Those worked out really, really well. And, we can debate their legacies, but those were home run picks. I'm not a big baseball draft Nick. There's an outfielder from Texas A&M, a college hitter who is in the conversation to be the number one pick, and college hitters come fast. I mean, Dylan Cruz was in the majors essentially a year after he was drafted. The other person in the discussion is Jackson Holliday's little brother, who's a high school kid and probably would take a little bit longer. But it's an advantageous position, especially when you're adding what will be a premium talent to a core that is, already establishing itself at the big league level. Pretty exciting prospect and something that finally fell their way.
Hey, and just sometimes the vibes are nice. Hey, let's feel like we're winning something, and then maybe go sign a pitcher. That'd be good. Barry Svrluga, you can read the column. It's very, very good in the Washington Post. And then you might want to click over to Thomas Boswell's column, because we're not going to get too many more of these. Boz is retiring, and I'd be remiss, Barry, if on the way out here I didn't let you just get a word in about your longtime colleague there at the Post, who is hanging up his pen after an illustrious Hall of Fame 50-year career.
Yeah, so he won the Baseball Writers Association of America Career Excellence Award on Tuesday, and that puts him into the writers' wing at the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, which is a lot of his colleagues, but also a lot of sports writers, baseball writers from around the country feel is like way, way, way overdue. He actually retired in 21, but you don't know it because he keeps like calling up and saying, I'm gonna file something else. And when he got the call to say he had won the award from the National Baseball Hall of Fame, he was working on a Soto column. So it's sometimes hard to get off the horse. I'd like to keep him up there as long as he can, and I'm going to drive over to. Some of us are having a celebration dinner with him tonight. So fun times and one of the all-time greats.
Indeed, I'm sure that's going to be a blast. Enjoy it, man, and thanks for a little time here on the radio before you head over.
Thanks, Craig. Appreciate it.
Barry Svrluga, everybody. Read his work, WashingtonPost.com/sports, or as we always like to say, when they throw the physical paper at your front door. All right, when we get back here on the Hoffman Show, back to the news of the day for the Commanders. More reaction rolling in on the Commanders putting Noah Brown, or not. I guess he's not on IR yet, but the announcement from Dan Quinn earlier today that Brown is going to likely miss the rest of the season, and the claiming of his probable replacement, KJ Osborne, coming to DC. We'll get you the latest and more from Dan Quinn next here on the Team 980. It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up at 5 o'clock, we'll get more reaction and insight on the big story of the day, which is something that Dan Quinn announced earlier today at Commanders Park.
Tough news on Noah. He's going to be out for a while. And so Brown. So he had a significant internal injury from the game. And so that's going to knock him out for a while. And we love him, man. This play style, the identity of how he goes. And so that one hurts. He's been absolutely one of our glue guys. And after the game, or during the game, between him and the medical staff, they did a really good job to address what was a serious injury. And, fortunately, he's going to be okay, but it's going to knock him out for a bit.
Say for a bit, is this season ending for him?
Yeah, we'll visit that later this week, but it's likely, heading that way.
So Noah Brown likely out for the season, internal injury, very scary situation. Great to hear that the medical staff handled it well and that he is on the process of being on the mend. On the football side, though, there is the gigantic hole to replace him. In between that press conference and the start of the show, or I guess not the start of the show because it happened about 7 minutes into the show, the Commanders went ahead and claimed or received word that they had won the claim for KJ Osborne. Osborne, most recently with the New England Patriots, mutually parted ways with them earlier in the week, and he is going to take his over 150 career receptions here to DC and will likely be the wide receiver too. But before that was announced and before that was processed earlier today, Quinn was asked who he would like to see step up in Brown's absence.
It is the hardest part as you're going through it for the game and when you miss, significant time. And we've got a pretty deep crew there. And so that helps where guys can play into different spots. And you've probably seen some guys play outside, some guys play inside. And so having a deep crew allows you to do that. But Noah does have some specific size and speed traits that are unique to him. He's just such a tough, hard-ass competitor. And so I love that he brings that to the team. And I know he'll get back and he'll get, well, but it's definitely a tough one for us because of not just what he brings on the field, but also, Scott, what he brings off the field as a ball player and as a man.
So you can hear the hurt in Dan Quinn's voice when he's like, we love him. And like, also, I think DQ understands the gap that Noah Brown filled. And in some ways, like what they thought Jahan could be, I think they thought Jahan could be a better pure receiver than what Noah Brown has been for them. But the toughness and the blocking, I mean, last game, they ran some of these insert plays where Noah Brown is swooping around as like a lead blocker through the hole. Diami did this as well. So some of this can be replaced by Diami. Some of this can be replaced by Luke. Some of this can be replaced by a guy like Olamide Zaccheaus. But none of them can do it all. And that's the inherent problem. And now you bring in Osborne, who can do a lot of similar things from a toughness, a quickness, whatever standpoint. But at the same time, he's not 6'2". He's not 6'3". He's not getting down the field and being a jump ball threat, drawing those PIs likely in the same way that Noah Brown was consistently able to do. And so they have a real question of how to approach this. Now, one thing that I think does give me, I don't know if hope's the right word, but like that's too pejorative. But one thing that I liked that they did against the Titans was they started to move guys around a little bit more. And so one of the things that we're going to find out, like I hope Osborne plays this weekend, in part because I want to see how they handle it. And I also, let me finish one thought before I start another. So the New Orleans Saints play a ton of man-to-man, like an absurd amount of man-to-man, considering that they don't have very good corners anymore because their number one man-to-man corner is going to be lining up on the other side of the field wearing number 23 for the first time in burgundy and gold this weekend in Marshawn Lattimore. So from a man-to-man standpoint, when you have limited receiving talent, which the Commanders also do, it's understaffed versus understaffed plus Terry McLaurin in a lot of ways. Missing a guy like that is huge because Noah can win one-on-one, especially against not very good corners. But one of the ways you can make your life a little easier is moving guys around, make it less predictable to get the right matchups if you're a defense. Part of the reason why some teams have been able to sit on Terry in man-to-man situations is they always knew he was going to line up on the left and they could put, safety help or extra help that way. They could, run a player underneath them, keep the corner over the top or corners playing underneath them and have a safety over the top. Whatever they would do, they would have the extra help on Terry McLaurin. Well, against Tennessee, Cliff picked some very specific spots to be like, he's not only on the right, but he's on the right in the slot. Now you have to make a decision. Do you want your number one corner to follow him in there? Or do you now have Terry on some nickel player who's not used to guarding Terry McLaurin? And so there are definite advantages to that. I think one of the advantages of staying put for the offense writ large is it's simpler for everybody. It's less mental clutter. You don't have to remember where you're going on a given play. And so as they, I'm curious how often this weekend Terry's in the game, not lined up left, and KJ Osborne's also in the game. That's something that can grow over the course of multiple weeks where they go, hey, all right, now that he knows the offense, we can start moving pieces around a little bit versus, all right, we have our package of plays, and with Luke and OZ and Diami are the other three receivers, we can interchange those guys a little bit. But Terry's just going to, or one of those guys can go line up left, and Terry can line up slot right or far right or wherever. Here in a bunch, there in a cluster, here in a stack. When it's KJ Osborne, do they just say, hey man, let's learn day one install, let's learn our basic stuff. We're going to make sure that when you're in there, it's one of those plays, and that is probably going to be Terry lined up left, which is fine. They don't need to line him up left or left and right 50%. Evenly split. They don't need to, have it to where he's in the slot all of a sudden 40% of the time. It's just enough to get the defense off of being predictable, to make it so a defensive play caller can't just default to man-to-man coverage, shade to 17. Can't really do that when he's lined up in the slot. And so staying in good down and distance, doing all the things that the Commanders have done when their offense has been great, none of that changes. And I don't necessarily think that's going to be a huge problem against the Saints because we're going to wind up spending all this time on the wide receivers when the interior of the Saints offensive line is not very good. And Brian Robinson should rush for 120 yards this weekend on plays up the gut. He just should, based on how they've run it.
and how the Saints defense has been. They're like 29th in rush efficiency defensively. Commanders are 3rd in rush efficiency offensively. So the KJ Osborne thing's important. The Noah Brown thing's really important for the Philly game. It's important for the Atlanta game. It's important for the Dallas game. And it's important for the playoffs. This weekend, I'm glad that the New Orleans Saints can hopefully serve as a bit of a ramp up. But we also acknowledge that the Titans, they steamrolled. But, in a lot of ways, there are some shades of the Cowboys where the Commanders should have won that game by a lot. If their offense could have gotten out early and scored a couple points, they could have been able to steamroll and follow the formula, if you will. And they obviously showed they can still do that against Tennessee. All right, we'll talk about this more and kind of some other key decisions that the Commanders have to make next with JP Finley. He joins us from Ashburn here on the Hoffman Show. Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980. It is 5 o'clock. It is time to check in with someone on the scene of the day's top story. And today that takes us to Ashburn.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
Today, we welcome in our very own JP Finley, of course, host of B. Mitch and Finley over on 106.7 The Fan, which you can also listen to live on the free Odyssey app, NBC4 as well. JP, what's up, dude?
Hey, buddy. How are you?
I'm good. So when you guys got into the press room today, did you have any inclination that Dan Quinn was about to tell you that what you heard about Noah Brown? Like, were there any rumblings of anything?
Yeah, I haven't said this yet, but I'll say it now. I knew that he was – I didn't see the ambulance move, but I know there was an ambulance involved last Sunday after the Titans game. And I knew – I had heard some players were like, damn, I don't know what that's about. And then the reality, and you know how this goes, with Crowder's injury – like him being on IR the last few weeks, he's been healthy for a few weeks. They were just kind of those are just like the roster machinations you use late in an NFL season where it's like, we obviously want Jameson around. We don't have a spot for him right now, so we're just going to leave him on the IR. And when I saw they opened Crowder's window Monday, I was like, something – I had no idea the severity, likely out for the season, all that. I did not know. But I said on the air yesterday with B. Mitch, I was like, we need to get some answers on this Noah Brown thing because it's a very serious – I'm very curious what was going on. So, yes, did I have an inkling? Yes, especially when I saw the Crowder move. Did I know the extent of what was going to happen? No.
Gotcha. So that is good. Definitely good context. I don't remember like hearing much, but also your brain goes into bye week mode so instantly. And that game at this point was, over a week ago. And it's like, oh yeah, I guess he did leave. That did happen. So obviously, not only did they open Crowder's window, but today we get the news that KJ Osborne has been claimed from the Patriots. How much do we know at this point about how they handle that transition and whether it's Crowder this weekend and then Osborne eventually, or what they do at that wide receiver position?
Well, don't they have to? They have to put Osborne on the active.
Yeah, he'll go on the active, and obviously they have to do that by the weekend. So they've got a couple days to figure it out. They don't have to immediately cut someone. And they, for all we know, there's another IR. Like we could have another hey, it's Saturday, and there goes another Rivera draft pick, and Phil Mathis gets cut this weekend. Like who knows? But there's I guess if Crowder's window opened Monday, they'll have 21 days for that. But I also wonder how quickly they can get Osborne up to speed versus Crowder, who they have, has been practicing or whatever, or has been in the meetings and stuff all year.
Yeah, I mean, those are all real good, fair questions. I think with Osborne, he is a vet that's been in the league and has had some level of productivity in the league. And I think, sometimes with wideouts, they can probably pick up an offense. Yes, you got to learn the specific vernacular. But I'm not sure for this weekend how it will go. But at some point, you do have a little bit of a roster squeeze, especially if you're trying to bring Crowder back. More importantly, the Noah Brown loss on its own is a factor. It's your third leading receiver. It's your second leading wide receiver. It goes Terry, Ertz, Noah. He's playing 56% of the snaps offensively, so there's going to be work for other players. But if you consider they've now lost Brown and Eckler, I mean, that's almost 1,100 yards of offense from this team that's gone. I think it's about 10 touchdowns. It's gone. And I think what they had been really good at is like manufacturing other ways of getting the productivity. And I kind of think that's what's got to happen here. The guy I look to, it's not so much the wideout position. I think you run more 12 personnel, and I think you got to get Sennett on the field more, and you got to get him more looks. I don't know what I don't know if Luke or Diami or even OZ gets more work out of this, but I think you got to try to manufacture this thing now. I think this may sound crazy. I think you run the ball even more. Ideally, if the game situation works for you, like B-Rob hasn't had like a 25, 23 carry game. I think you got to lean on him. I mean, these guys, he was like laughing and joking. Like he seems fresh. I think you've got to try to manufacture the productivity now, because I think Crowder can hit the ground running for you, and he helps you at punt return if you're still kind of nervous about OZ. But if you're able to sign Osborne on December 12th or whatever, the odds of him coming in and giving you 6 for 65 just aren't that high.
Not this weekend. I do wonder if, like, by the Atlanta game, though, they can get him up to speed. He is a guy, like, his 3 years at Minnesota, he caught a lot of balls. Like, he was, 2 of the 3 years, like 55, 60 balls. His rookie year, he barely played. His last year, he fell off a little bit, and obviously he's been a non-factor. But, he could play for sure. And then, the guy that I'm actually curious about, I'm glad you mentioned Sennett, because, like, he is a second-round pick who's got some juice to him. And I do wonder, or I do feel like there's more juice to squeeze, to just continue that analogy there with some of their 12 personnel stuff, how much they've done it. They can, now break some tendencies they've had that are pretty significant in some of those 12 personnel packages where they run the mess out of the ball, especially when it's 12 personnel with Sennett and Bates. Like, just let Sennett go run routes out of that and see what happens. But Luke McCaffrey has also quietly had I don't know what to call it here. Like, it's not good because there hasn't been a ton of production, but like he's been open and he's just later in progressions and is kind of doing his job. And if Jaden had, gotten farther into the progression because he needed to, that guys earlier weren't open, he'd probably have twice the catches this year. How do you feel about Luke's development, and what do you hear around the building as you talk to folks about McCaffrey and where he's at this stage of his rookie year?
Everybody loves him, works his ass off. I mean, really, really well liked, respected. Some of the stuff with Jaden, it shouldn't be a surprise for a rookie, but there are times where he uses his legs, and maybe if he keeps his eyes downfield, he could connect for a big play. Maybe, honestly, New Orleans is awful at that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Jameis Winston hit him for 2 touchdowns off broken plays. Maybe that's the kind of thing that happens this week. New Orleans is really bad against mobile quarterbacks. I think this could be a big Jaden week. The Luke thing is interesting. I think Denton does a bit where he's bet on him to hit an anytime touchdown like every week, and now it's up to like plus 1,000 because there's just no production. What I know though, Craig, is dude, it's week 15, and you got a pair of Friday night draft picks that it's like, all right, fellas, you both don't have to step up. That'd be great, but at least one of you needs to emerge over these last 4 games between Sennett and McCaffrey, I think.
Yeah, it's tough because I feel like McCaffrey is definitely an upside play to an extent because he was playing quarterback 2 years ago. But at the same time, like, you still draft, if he's that much of a project, then he should be a 5th-round pick, not a 3rd-round pick. And same thing for Sennett. Like, yeah, okay, we understand kind of what you are and that you have your limitations. And it seems like there's enough mental mistakes that I feel like there's a trust thing there. But like, if you are, to your point, if you're a Friday pick, especially if you're a second rounder, like at some point it's time to stop making those mistakes and get on with it. Especially, I feel like in an offense that's really not that difficult to learn as far as NFL offenses go.
Yeah, I think, what's interesting is with Luke, he's there. Like, you wonder if the targets will increase, right? With Sennett, you wonder if the snaps will increase. John Bates is not like going to be a fan favorite because he's never going to matter in fantasy or any of that. But he provides a level of certainty that I think every offensive coordinator in the NFL would love. It just, what he's going to give you. He's a really tough edge-setting tight end. He blocks like crazy. Really physical, hard worker. And I get they don't want to take him off the field with Ertz, but like I don't know. I think the Sennett piece is more on coaching, because if you just look at his snap counts of the 3 tight ends, it's obviously the lowest. I think though, Zach Ertz has great hands, runs great routes, undoubtedly, but Sennett's the only one that I think gives you big play potential of those 3, and you might need it.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And, Ertz is just not like he'll get open all the time. The thing with Bates is like he'll go down and block a 3 technique. Like he'll go and smash a defensive tackle on a wham play, and you're like,
he's crazy, dude.
Like that's cool. Oh, he wants to fight a defensive lineman. That's cool. And Sinnott, Sinnott is a good blocker, but he cannot. Like, I'd rather have Ben Sinnott clearing out a corner when Jade pulls it on the edge, which he's buried a couple guys this year on some big stuff, versus whamming a 3 technique, which I know is like football nerdy stuff, but it's fairly significant in terms of getting the run game going specifically. Defensively is the other big question for the week, and I've kind of asked everybody this, and I feel like we're all spitballing. I'm not sure if DQ addressed this today, and I'm sure Joe Witt will sidestep it tomorrow, but we have reached Marshawn Lattimore week, which the question is then, what do you do on the other side? Is it St. Juice? Is it St. Still? Is it some rotation? Is it, Igbenogany inside? Is it St. Still? What do we know at this point, and what's your best guess based off what we know?
Nobody would really talk. Nobody gave us much insight today. We thought Lattimore was about to talk, and then he's like, sorry, I got to go do treatment, and he left the locker room. Mikey is too smart. I kind of thought I got him to say something, and he's like, yeah, we'll see what the coaches tell us. So as far as like direct insight from a player or a coach, we got none of it. Interestingly, I can't remember which receiver it was. Obviously, with the Noah Brown stuff, we wanted to talk to all the receivers today. And one of the receivers we also asked, I think it was Diami, asked him about going up against Lattimore, and he's like, yeah, that's a guy that allows you to play a lot more man. I think that's a fairly obvious expectation with a guy of his caliber, coming on. DQ said it is pretty rare to add a player of this caliber this late in the season. Like, it generally just doesn't happen, and it will allow them to try some really different things. The specifics to who, I don't know. And honestly, the who has gotten pretty weird in the secondary over the last month anyway, 6 weeks, or changed a lot anyway. And I kind of expect that to continue. Because even when you get Lattimore out there, I imagine they're going to kind of have to figure out what to do opposite him. We know Samerstill is going to be out there. The question I guess you're asking is, does Mikey come back to the slot? Is it BSJ over there? Is it Mike Davis? Igbenogany? Those are the questions that remain, I guess.
Right.
But I do think it allows them to play different coverages.
I do too, and I do feel like there'll be some level of rotation, and maybe if one of those guys starts standing out. But, for all the bad rep that BSJ has gotten for some huge mistakes in big spots, like the last time out, he played pretty well, and Sainer still gave up 100 yards. So that was less than ideal. Igbenogany's had some fantastic games, is really physical against the run. He's also had some absolute bomb scares. And so I think that's the hard thing is, like, which guy do you trust on a weekly basis, knowing that you can give that guy more help too? Because that's the other part of this is, like, you can take resources you used to have to disperse and just go, Marshawn's over there, he's fine, Everybody else, you focus over here, and that can make any of those three guys better.
I totally agree. If you're able to, I mean, it's not a very complicated concept. If you can really count on one guy to lock down a side of the field, then you can devote more resources the other way. And I don't know how big of a test this Saints pass game is, both with their quarterback situation. I mean, it's bizarre. We still don't know who it is going to be starting. Because it's not like, it'd be one thing if it was just an injury thing, like, oh, they're just not sure Carr can go, but they're not sure Carr can go, and they're not sure who they want to make the backup. Like, it's just bizarre. But you've got questions at quarterback, and Kamara's a really good player, but like, if Olave was still healthy for them or something, but dude, there's serious passing threats coming between Kirk and the Falcons, and then Philly, and even CeeDee Lamb late in the year. So this is a very good game to try to get your feet wet and understand how this new secondary is going to work.
No doubt. The Philly's passing game is weird, but it's potent. And same, I think it's the same but different, and different stylistically for Atlanta. And then, as you mentioned, CD and Dallas already beat them once, so they'll have their attention there. Last thing for you, JP, is JP Finley, host B. Mitch and Finley, with us here on the Hoffman Show. Of course, you can listen to JP and Brian 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. over on 106.7 The Fan. Is just kind of the general mood in the locker room today with the Noah news. It's obviously something they've probably known about, and some of those guys are real close. And Terry and Noah go back to Ohio State, the whole deal. I mean, DQ just being like, when he had that, I still haven't seen the clip, but we played the audio of it, when he's like, man, we love that guy. Like, that sounded so sincere. There's real pain in his voice. So as you talk to guys in the locker room today about Noah's situation, what were those conversations like?
Yeah, man, I think there was some serious concern for his health and safety for a period there. And I think there's a lot of relief of that he's okay, and things are moving forward, and I think that was a real thing. And now, dude, I know that it sounds so cliche for the audience, but football truly is a game where in a locker room the threat of injury is so real and so constant that it is, when a guy goes down, you gotta just kind of keep it moving. And that could change a little if it's an all-pro or an all-pro type player or a quarterback or something, where it really impacts the locker room. But, dude, like, Noah Brown's a good player. He's second wide out. Okay, let's see what Diami's got. And everybody just kind of moves forward.
Yeah, it's a survival mechanism, because if you think about it too long, you're like, why am I doing this?
The only way they can operate.
Yeah, why the hell would I do this if that's what's going on to the guy that does the same exact thing I do for the same team and played in the same game? I think that's well put. JP, always appreciate it, man. Have a good one, and we'll see you and talk to you here soon.
Anthony's upset he can't go to the work Christmas party. I thought I should let you know that.
Oh, well, we'll deal with that. I mean, someone's got to do a show till 7, and apparently it's us. Not all of us can be done at 2 every day.
I got to go to a show at 8:30, bro.
That's true.
Watch on the NBC Washington app.
Hey, you get that TV money, though. And let's be real. TV money, greater than signed radio money. We don't have to get into it too deep, but just so folks know.
Goodbye.
See you, pal. That's what he gets that's what he gets for bringing that up, Anthony. See, I got your back. I made him real uncomfortable.
I thought I was confiding in JP when I told him I was a little upset, but he wanted to let the world know.
And here's the thing: you and I, same team.
Yes,
it's the Hoffman Show team right here, inseparable. Don't mess with us, otherwise, I'll talk about how the fact that you got that TV money, and I mean, really, that's not really an insult. Like, good for JP.
Yeah,
I'm not mad about it. I don't get mad over other people's money.
Nope.
Anyone wants to give me TV money, like, we can talk.
Donate $1.
TV money is more like $2. That's kind of the point.
Or $3.
Yeah, something like that. All right. Coming up, well, actually, a couple things. Couple housekeeping notes here before we get to Competition Wednesday next. And Anthony, this is a plastic bag with the Groucho Marx disguise. Oh, Anthony's got his on his face. He is ready to go for Competition Wednesday. I also don't know who won. And if I won, or if you upset me this week, then are you going to spin the wheel for me? How are we going to do that? Because I'm doing the show from home today. Because I've been battling off a little sickness, and I'm being a good teammate by not seeing any of my other teammates because I don't want any of y'all to get sick.
I can spin it, or you can spin it tomorrow.
All right, we'll have to figure that out. First, we have to figure out if that's an issue. Second, we'll figure that out when we get there. I do have to wear this for the last time that I lost, though. So I'll be wearing a very silly costume next. I don't think that. So if you want to watch the show on YouTube at the Team 980, do that. I am sad that I was not in today because Anthony did bring me a fedora that I could have worn. I'll see if I have any other. I don't think I have any other like funky hats. But I think I'm just gonna be stuck in the glasses. Only Groucho Marx glasses. If you want to see some of our friends, though, even though I'm not going to see any of them tonight at the holiday party, and neither will Anthony, watch the Commanders with JP from the Sports Junkies and our Burgundy and Gold Game Day crew. That includes Denton Day and Linnell Willingham. You can do that this Sunday at Center Pocket in Bowie. Burgundy and Gold pregame game day is live starting at 11. That is at the Center Pocket in Bowie. Last thing I'll remind you of, if you're listening to us right now in the Odyssey app, you can leave us a voicemail. Just hit the microphone icon right underneath where it says the Team 980 and has a station description. You hit that button, record a voice message, and we might play it here on the show. When we get back, Competition Wednesday. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube as well, where you see I look like an idiot. I'm now wearing my punishment for the most recent or my loss in Competition Wednesday about a month ago. I just haven't been around, and we were waiting on the costumes. I wasn't available to spin the wheel. Finally was able to spin the wheel last week. And Anthony, somehow yours looks good. Mine, I don't like. Did I not build this thing right? So clearly the nose about came off. Also, I can't even get as close to the microphone as I want to. That's how big the nose is on this thing.
You had to build yours?
Yeah, mine like, see, it came in 2 pieces.
Oh,
Should I just go with just the
just
glasses? That's slightly less ridiculous. The nose piece, yeah, it has to attach.
Did it break?
Maybe it broke in transport, in which case that would explain why it's not really wanting to stay in place. Don't love that.
Yeah, I think it broke.
Yeah, I think it broke. So we're just toss that over the top. I'm just going to wear the glasses. Sorry that Anthony's costume is more ridiculous. But I have to make sure that I'm in costume to deliver the breaking news. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Bill Belichick is the new coach at the University of North Carolina. So they've replaced, I think it was 73-year-old Mac Brown with 72-year-old Bill Belichick. So they got that going for them, which is nice. All right, it's Competition Wednesday time here on the Team 980. Commanders have Competition Wednesday every single week. They find ways to have fun and compete. So Anthony and I wanted to get in on the spirit. And so we decided to each and every week pick 3 games against the spread. We go head-to-head on those games. Well, we each pick 3 games. We're not necessarily head-to-head. We have one tiebreaker that is head-to-head. And then whoever has the better record at the end of the week has to, or doesn't have to, spin the wheel of mediocre punishment. The loser does that. And the wheel of mediocre punishment has a list of, well, you guessed it, mediocre punishments. So, on the season, I've won a lot. Anthony's won once. Overall records entering the week, I am 19-5 against the spread.
I've won more than once, Craig.
I'm sorry, you won twice? That's right, you won twice. This one, and I had to do the push-ups.
Yes.
So,
no. And
3
an
times.
ice bath.
And an ice bath, which we still have to do. We'll get that squared away. Weather, by the way, is about to turn again, where you just walk outside for 3 minutes and have it count. Point is, that's pretty impressive that you've won 3 times, Anthony, because I've only lost 5 games. I've only lost 5 games against the spread in this selections all year.
Well, that is pretty impressive then.
You, sir, have fought your way back to 12-12, entering week 14. So let's go through it. Anthony, the first game that you picked this weekend was the Pittsburgh Steelers, which was a bold pick because just a couple of weeks ago in the Steelers and Browns game, you lost a Competition Wednesday because the Browns upset the Steelers on Thursday Night Football.
Yep.
And this was a division game with a big line. And you went back to the well. And it paid off for you.
Yes, sir. Give it up for me, Craig.
1-0 for Anthony Haney. Well done, sir. Well done. My first game, I picked a terrible football team. An absolutely god-awful football team to cover a 5-point spread. The good news is the New York Giants were facing the New Orleans Saints. They only lost by 3. That is a cover for me. It could have been better. Perhaps could have been worse had they made that last field goal. If they make that last field goal and then in overtime they lose on a walk-off touchdown, could have been bad. It wasn't. They got the field goal blocked, down 3. 14-11 was, I think, the final score.
Yes, it was.
Ugh. Except for me. That's 1-0 for your boy. Second game you picked, Anthony. I feel bad for you on this one.
No.
I do really genuinely feel bad for you on this one. I, too, thought the Chicago Bears were going to cover a 3.5 point. And in fact, by Friday, it had jumped to 4. You got this game at 4, Anthony. It needed to be closer to 40. The Bears got absolutely plastered. Plastered.
Are you sure I chose the Bears?
That's what I've written down. Chicago +4.
It wasn't San Fran -4?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
If you want to go check the tape, you can, but all you're going to do is hear yourself pick the wrong team.
Yep.
So unfortunately, Anthony, for you, you are 2-1.
I'm 1-1, right?
Or sorry, 1-1. 1-1. Let's write that down correctly. Okay. Then my next game, I went bold, Anthony. The number was just so big, but the Eagles were killing people. And I said, Carolina Panthers, you've been a frisky team as of late. I think you're going to cover 12.5. Not only do they cover, they're a Xavier Leggett. You're so mad right now. They're a Xavier Leggett catch away from winning that damn thing. Carolina plus 12.5. 2-0 for me. 1-1 for Anthony.
You sure it wasn't Eagles minus 12?
I am 100% sure on that one.
I'm just making sure.
Anthony, good news for you. And because the last two games were the two primetime games. We had Sunday Night Football. We had Monday Night Football. You had Sunday Night Football, where the LA Chargers just had to keep it close. And they did. They were plus 3.5. They covered that because the Chiefs wanted a walk-off field goal. So that's 3.5. You're good. Anthony, you were 2-1 entering Monday Night Football.
Let's go.
Where all the all the Dallas Cowboys had to do was not lose by more than 5. And had they at least tackled Jamar Chase at the end of the game and set up a game-winning field goal, we would both be 2-1. But Anthony, they didn't. And Jamar Chase scored a touchdown, and I went 3-0 again.
This is not the life I deserve, man. Are you kidding me, Craig?
When I started to do the math before the segment, I texted Tony, and I go, Tony, Anthony's about to be so mad.
Oh, my God.
It's not just that I went 3-0 and you lost. It's because the dumbass Dallas Cowboys cost you a legitimate, like, the Bengals basically backdoor covered, but they won.
This is insane, man.
You want something to make you feel a little bit better?
You're going to tell me I won a tiebreaker.
No, I actually won the tiebreaker this week. So had it gone to a tiebreaker, it just would have been the Seattle Arizona game. Seattle was favored Seattle was 2.5-point dogs. They won outright. So at least had it gone to that, you wouldn't have won.
So I got to spin the wheel again.
You got to spin the wheel, Anthony.
This is brutal, man. It's getting ridiculous, actually. It's getting ridiculous, Craig.
I'm 22-5 on the year. You know what's so dumb? I haven't made a single cent on this. I'm an idiot. Why am I not betting these?
Yeah, straight bet all of these games, Craig, from now on.
Is there a way? Someone's got to have a website. How much money would I have won.com? Where if I just bet $5 on all of our Competition Wednesday game, have I cost myself $1,000? How much money have I cost myself? $5 bets. I'm 22-5. Oh, Anthony's slowly but surely getting the wheel in place. Oh my God. You're 14 and 13. You're above 500. By the way, I was 3-0 last week. I was 3-0 the week before. How many games in a row have I gotten? Just 9. I'm 9-0 in the last 3 weeks. Oh my God. Anthony, on the wheel, just for folks that weren't listening at the beginning of the show, they should know that if the costume show gets spun, then Anthony will have to wear the absolutely ridiculous Rooster Christmas sweater, which Anthony Haney and Chris Russell are not the same sized humans. So it's going to look extra funny. Anthony will have to wear that next Wednesday, Friday. When are we doing that?
I think next Wednesday.
Okay, I think next Wednesday could work. Okay. Also on the board, 100 push-ups, hot wings, an ice bath, which that would be 3 that Anthony owes the show. Fantasy sub,
Although we're getting towards fantasy playoffs, so we might need to take that one off the board. I'm really kind of hoping you get either hot wings or a costume show. I really actually just want the costume show. I want you to have to wear the Rooster sweater. Anthony, spin that wheel. Ba-dum-ba-da. Ba-dum-ba-da-na-na. Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. You just owe me lunch again? Or does that land on ice bath? Lunch? Okay. Anthony owes me lunch again. Nice and simple.
I was about to say, man, ice bath would be crazy.
Yeah, you've gotten a lot of those, even though we haven't actually served out the penalty for that yet. When we do, we'll put it on our YouTube page at Craig Hoffman and at the Team 980. When we get back, we will pick our next week's slate for Competition Wednesday, and Anthony's psyched about it.
It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Top stories of the day, Commander style, 6 o'clock, pick 6. Here from Dan Quinn and Jaden Daniels. We continue our Competition Wednesday now, though, where we pick 3 games against the spread. I am still wearing my mediocre punishment costume, a.k.a. Groucho Marx glasses, from losing a couple weeks ago. Since that loss, I believe I am 9-0. Anthony just spun the wheel, and he has to buy me yet again another lunch. You want to do that tomorrow, by the way, since we have our meeting moved till tomorrow with the boss?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, cool. Good to know I don't have to bring lunch tomorrow because I finished some of our homemade lunches that we meal prepped today. So I could have had a turkey sandwich tomorrow, or I can have whatever Anthony's going to buy me. And I think I'd prefer to have the latter. All right, ready to go, week 15?
Am I ready to go?
Yes.
I guess so.
Excellent.
I guess so.
All right. Some big numbers, some interesting numbers. It was funny on the pick show on Monday. Tony, because he had a bad week last week, and so he went Oppo Jinxo, and whatever he thought he wanted to pick, he would pick the other team. And sometimes I was like, I actually like the pick you made, aka your Oppo Jinxo pick. I think is the correct pick. So my head got a little turned sideways by some of that. But I think I'm going to start with Cincinnati, where I ended last week. I think this offense is legitimately good. I think Tennessee is abysmal, and I don't think Tennessee is going to be able to score at all. So let me actually double check the line because these things do change. I used the same spreadsheet from Monday, but the lines change between Monday. But this one hasn't. So it's still -5. I'm going to take Cincinnati minus the 5 against Tennessee.
Cincinnati minus the 5. I actually love that game. That is a good game. I think for me, I was starting out with looking at Thursday Night Football, but Thursday Night Football has not been good to yours truly, Craig.
No, it's a funky one. They're back. Like last week was one thing because they were on full week rest. This week they're back to quick turnarounds, 2 division rivals. Kyle's kind of really owned Sean. I don't know. I picked the Rams on Monday, but I this game is not on my list. I'll put it that way.
These games are they are funky. I think I'm going to start with the team that helped you win this week, Craig. I'm going to start with the Dallas Cowboys.
Okay.
They played the Carolina Panthers on Sunday, and Carolina is the favorite to outright win this game.
Yep. Because they're better.
I'm going to go with Dallas, though.
Okay.
To cover the 3.
Oh, it's up to 3?
I see Carolina minus 3.
Dang. It was 1.5 on Monday. Okay, so Dallas plus 3. Like
Dallas
that.
plus 3.
I like the plus 3. Had it been plus 3, I definitely probably would have.
I wish it was 3.5.
Don't get too greedy. You settle down over there. I typically try to avoid big numbers, but
ain't no way, Craig. Ain't no way.
I'm not going to pick the biggest number on the board.
Okay.
I kind of want to. I will say the biggest number on the board, is it still 15?
16.5.
It's 16.5?
16.5.
Dude. It was 15 on Monday.
At least you got it at 15.
Baltimore at the New York Giants is a 16.5 point spread. And if I had to pick, I would take the Ravens. Tommy DeVito versus the Ravens. Get the out of here.
Yeah.
The second biggest number on the board, unless there's been changes that I'm not seeing, is the Washington Commanders
Yes, we are.
on the road at New Orleans.
Say it ain't so.
Taking a 7.5-point road favorite feels like lunacy. But we have seen the Commanders can blow teams out. I think Washington is going to blow New Orleans out. I think that the Kamara is not as good anymore. Hopefully that's not famous last words.
He's having a solid season. They have no support.
You ready for some next gen stats, Anthony? Or one next gen stat?
Yeah, go give me one.
Alvin Kamara's broken tackle rate. I can't believe I'm saying this stat as I'm sitting here. You want some next gen stats on broken tackle percentage as I sit here in my dumb Groucho Marx glasses? Sure do. This is the path you've chosen, Craig. Great. Your name's on the show. Excellent job. The Alvin Kamara broken tackle percentage is a sub 20% on all of his touches. First time since 2018. So he's not the same player. They also have no other weapons offensively. Their second best weapon offensively is like Jawan Johnson, their tight end, who the Giants just completely forgot existed on his touchdown catch last week. So I think they won't be able to score. Commanders defense should be able to ramp it up. And I do think defensively, there is a chance that they rush for 200 yards again. I think there's a chance this is an absolute blowout. New Orleans is terrible against scrambling quarterbacks, so Jaden should be able to extend some drives. I'm taking Washington minus 7.5.
I like it. Dang, man.
Sorry.
Next up on the board for your boy. These are some ugly games, Craig.
There are some ugly games. There's frankly not another game that I really like.
Yeah.
Those were my two. Then again, I've been pained every single week. I don't know what to do, and then I've done okay.
Dang, should I bet with my heart, Craig?
It's a dangerous game.
It is a dangerous game, but guess what, Craig? I'm going to do it, baby. Okay. Give me the Colts +4 against the Broncos.
Ooh.
+4. And I like this 4 number. Give me on +4.
Okay. I like you betting underdogs. That's you get points. That's a smart way to do it. That is definitely a smart way to do it. Which is kind of why I'm looking at this. Is there any other underdogs that I like? And there's one, I guess, but man, I don't really like them that much.
Talking about the Bills?
No. The underdog I'm thinking about is New England because it's a decent enough number. And I am worried that Arizona is kind of fundamentally broken offensively. But I'm like, New England is a team that will put up 3 points, and I don't need Arizona to win 14-3 and cover by 11.
Yeah.
The Denver game, by the way, I could see that going either way. I could see that. I could see Indy outright winning that or Denver winning by 30. So that's a good luck is basically what I'm saying there.
Thank you, Craig.
Am I going to leave this to Monday Night Football again? Am I really going to bet on Kirk the way that he's going right now?
I wouldn't do it. Maybe I would do it.
The thing is, I don't like any other game more. Screw it. I'm betting 3 favorites. What has gotten into me? But the Raiders aren't any good. The Falcons can be when they don't throw the ball to the other team. I don't think the Raiders are going to force a bunch of turnovers. They got to win by a touchdown. No, I can't do that. I got to pick something. This is becoming bad radio. Oh my God. You know what? Pennsylvania State Championship game.
Hey, yo.
Actually, no, I don't like that one either. Because now A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts are fighting.
Isn't that a good thing?
I mean, maybe it is. You know what? Screw it. I'm taking the Eagles -5. Is that still -5 where you're looking at it?
5.5.
I got it at 5.5. Son of a gun. All right. The segment's running out of time. Philly -5.5. I think they're going to run all over Pittsburgh. I know that's something that typically doesn't happen, but I also think that Pittsburgh's offense is going to hit a screeching halt, or Russ is going to enter the MVP conversation. One of the two things is going to happen. I'm going to bet on their offense not being able to do a whole lot, and Philly busting off the Saquon. Philly's going to follow their formula where Saquon runs for 60 yards at the end of the game. They also play a ton of man coverage, and that's where the Eagles are actually good at passing the ball.
All right, last game for me, Craig. I'm going to take the Jets minus 3.5 against the Jaguars. We don't have to talk about this game. Just know that I'm taking the Jets minus 3.5. And next Wednesday, if I cry because the Jets did not cover, it is what it is.
I guess so. Maybe your tears will drown in an ice bath. All right, what do we got as a tiebreaker? Quickly.
Bills, Lions.
Lions.
I'm taking the line. I'm taking the Lions. I'll tell you this earlier today.
Okay. I'm good with that. All right. Tie breaker. Craig has Detroit. No, I have Buffalo
Yeah, you have Buff.
+2.
Hashtag go Bills.
All right. Hashtag go Bills. When we get back here on the Hoffman Show, back to the Commanders and our pick 6 at 6. Dan Quinn talking about Noah Brown's injury and much more from Ashburn.
It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980. Just after 6 o'clock, let's take a look at the top Commander storylines of the day. Hearing much, but also your brain goes into bye week.
My bad. I forgot to mute the stream I had up of you.
Oh,
but here we go.
All right, ready? We're gonna re-rack that. Anthony, let's do it. It's time for the biggest Commander storylines of the day.
The 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the Pick 6 at 6.
We set out to find a leader, someone who could take this franchise to the next level and build an elite team that consistently competes for championships.
All right, let's get to it. Number 1 is the biggest story of the day, which has some multiple layers to it. But let's start with Dan Quinn delivering the news on Noah Brown.
Tough news on Noah. He's going to be out for a while. And so Brown. So he had a significant internal injury from the game. And so that's going to knock him out for a while. And we love him, man. This play style, the identity of how he goes. And so that one hurts. He's been absolutely one of our glue guys. And after the game, or during the game, between him and the medical staff, they did a really good job to address what was a serious injury. And, fortunately, he's going to be okay, but it's going to knock him out for a bit.
Say for a bit, is this season ending for him?
Yeah, we'll visit that later this week, but it's likely, heading that way.
So that update, obviously scary, significant, and not good for all accounts, both football and personally for Noah Brown. Really, really scary. And Jaden Daniels actually also was asked about this at the start of his press conference today, losing a guy who's been his number 2 wide receiver for the majority of the season.
Yeah, I mean, he's an impactful player. Obviously, we were praying and wishing him a speedy recovery. We're always here for him. That's our brother, so nothing changes on our side.
And I think this team has a real maturity about it, that they'll be able to handle things well in terms of being there for Noah. And they've done this for other guys. Like, hey, we got to be there for our guy, for our brother, to use Jaden's term. But also, we got to move on. We got to keep playing. We got to figure out how to replace him on the field. Now, the Commanders this afternoon did claim KJ Osborne off of waivers from New England. He and the Patriots mutually parted ways earlier in the week. So Osborne, who has had some pretty big seasons as the number 2 and when he was in Minnesota behind Justin Jefferson, but he is going to come in and be Terry McLaurin's number 2, if you will, here in D.C. for the rest of the season. We'll see how it goes, see how quickly he can get up to speed, but it's also going to come on a bunch of other guys that were already in the building, which brings us to number 2, and Dan Quinn talking about how big of a loss it is to not have Noah Brown for probably the remainder of the season.
It is the hardest part as you're going through it for the game, and when you miss, significant time, and we've got a pretty deep crew there, and so that helps where guys can play into different spots. And you've probably seen some guys play outside, some guys play inside, and so having a deep crew allows you to do that. But Noah does have some specific size and speed traits that are unique to him. He's just such a tough, hard-ass competitor, and so I love that he brings that to the team. And I know he'll get back and he'll get well, but it's definitely a tough one for us because of not just what he brings on the field, but also, Scott, what he brings off the field as a ball player and as a man.
So I think one thing you really hear in Dan Quinn and both of his bites, and you hear this from Jaden, and JP Finley joined us earlier and talked a bit about it, is like this is a guy that was really well liked, really well respected in the locker room. They brought him in for a reason. Terry was able to speak to his character, as were some of the other Ohio State guys when Noah was brought in from Houston back in between the end of the preseason and week 1. And they're going to miss him in a lot of different ways. The tone setting that he has and the physicality he brings, and that's going to be required of Osborne and Luke McCaffrey and De'Ami Brown and Olamide Zaccheaus. Jaden Daniels, his responsibility to get them all involved. How does he see the replacement of 85 going?
Yeah, I mean, I'm confident those guys will go out there and make plays. They put in the work. They put in the work daily, getting here early, staying after practice, putting in the work. So obviously the work that you put in, that's the product you're going to see on Sundays.
Simple enough. One of the guys that might be contributing as we get to number 3 in our pick 6 is Jamison Crowder. He's still on the team. He's been on IR, but he's been healthy for the last couple of weeks. But what you do if you don't really have a spot for a guy is just keep him on IR. There's no rules against that. He's getting paid. Not that he doesn't care. He wants to get out there and compete, but he just can't practice. He can't do anything until you open his window. Well, Monday, as they were anticipating this Noah Brown news, they opened Jamison Crowder's 21-day window. Dan Quinn on that and why they chose to do that now, and obviously if the Noah Brown stuff has any impact on that.
So he's had a good process of going through, and we haven't missed one step of his recovery. And that's the biggest piece. We were referring to Marshawn earlier, and it's the same thing with JC, to say all the way through to make sure there are no setbacks. We're pushing it forward. And then when we feel like, all right, it's game ready, then we'll go. So we'll make that decision after we go through practice. Could be this week or the following. We have some space and time to do that. His value as a returner, his value as a slot is proven. And so that's a good thing. But we're not going to miss one step. If he's ready and it fits, then we'll do it. And if we need more space and runway to do that, we'll go that way. So like most big decisions, you take the time you need to make the right decision. And then that's why they have this window, which I think honestly is a really good return to play format. Some people need longer windows and runways to return. Some injuries require that. Others don't need as much. So that's why, this player doesn't need 7 days or 14 days. He only needs 7. So I think having the flexibility, it's just better for the players. And I don't know what the numbers say, but I would imagine that the re-injury rate is lower, because years ago when they were back, you go, and we're back, you go, and we're getting smarter, as we're moving forward. And I think that's a big piece of it.
I think it's a great point by Quinn. I don't know how much of it actually applies to Crowder, though, because he's kind of been healthy. Like, he was a full participant in practice today, whatever that means. And I'm glad he mentioned the return ability, too, because I think that you can upgrade on Olamide Zaccheaus. And Crowder has shown the ability to be explosive in the punt return game, and he's been fairly reliable. He did, I remember, drop a couple last year, but he at least balanced it out with a lot of really solid returns. I think some of his punt return stuff is maybe a little overhyped, just purely based off the numbers. People think he's like a great returner. He's not. He's good. But I think what you're getting from Zaccheaus has not been a whole lot. So that is definitely a possibility to have Crowder back there. Not to mention, as Jaden Daniels talked about, what he could bring to the offense.
He's a savvy vet. Played a lot of football. Able to go out there and kind of know the spots in the different zones and get open. So it's great to have Jay Crowder back.
Obviously, they played together in the preseason, and we will see if they wind up playing together as soon as this Sunday. More next on Marshawn Lattimore, his return, as well as the early looks from both Daniels and Quinn on the New Orleans Saints. But first, let's get you an update on the latest in the world of women's sports, presented by Wawa. Chicken how you wanna at Wawa with customizable crispy or roasted chicken sandwiches. How do the Commanders avoid the pitfalls that so many do coming off of the bye week? You'll hear from Logan Paulson on that coming up at 6:30. Right now, we continue, though, with our Pick 6 at 6, the 6 biggest stories of the day. We talked about the injuries to the injury to Noah Brown, Jamison Crowder coming back, and the other receivers that need to step up, including the newly claimed KJ Osborne. Off the top of the hour, you missed that. Just hit the rewind button in the Odyssey app. All right, number 4, Marshawn Lattimore is back at practice today, and he is truly, finally, actually practicing. He practiced in full. Dan Quinn talked about how much one defender can change the defense when that defender is the man-to-man corner that this team has been dreaming of having all year.
Yeah, I think any defender, like it's a lot of positions you could say that for, John. I think specifically with Marshawn, that's a big deal for us to add a player of his caliber to our team. And so, not to make it, one different than the other, but anytime you can add, competition to a group, it's a really big deal. And Marshawn's, certainly, trending in the right direction for us to play. And so we'll take it through the whole week. We're not going to miss one step with him and the practicing and hitting all the markers. So if it trends that way good, then we'll go.
And hopefully, hamstring injuries are funny, man. Hopefully that he truly has had the time where there is no risk of re-injury. He's past that point, but sometimes you don't know till you know. And if you know, it's too late. So fingers crossed, all things good for Marshawn Lattimore the rest of the week. Now, the question I think that has been really key, there's two, really, when it comes to the Lattimore edition. One, who plays opposite him? Everyone tight-lipped, mum on that. The other is kind of what can you do that you haven't been able to do so far. So Dan Quinn was asked how advantageous it could be to have a different defensive look potentially with Lattimore out there on the field.
I didn't put a timetable on it to say there had to be something, by this marker or this date. Adam and I wanted to go after it together as hard as we could and, keep our head down to go. That's probably a better question, months from now when the season's done to say, what are the things that we've accomplished that we wanted to so far? And now what are the steps that we want to go ahead? As it sits today, I don't think too far down the line or too far back for that matter. And the reason I do that is just, it's just throw it all into this week with the guys. And
I played the wrong freaking clip.
It's been like a really cool journey so far. And I haven't allowed myself to look, like I said, too far down one way or another. But the people, like most things, make the experience. And so that's the part that, I'm really enjoying in those relationships with those people.
That one on, the addition of a guy like Lattimore and kind of the way that they built this team. We do have Quinn, though, more specifically on the defensive look that Marshawn Lattimore could potentially provide them starting against his old team in New Orleans.
It's a big deal, Dave. You're right. And to add a player of this caliber, like after the trade deadline, so to speak, and that just doesn't happen very often. And every once in a while, there might be a player that comes back off an IR that had an injury that was there. And there is an energy that goes along with that. And so we're really pumped to, have him and get rolling with him. But it does take a few games to get into that rhythm, with new people. But it can change the math. There's no doubt about that. You're on the right topic. But it's important getting into the reps and going through that, over the next month, because then collectively, how do I communicate with him? There's an eye signal. A nonverbal call, those kind of things that you don't necessarily see at practice that happen in the game. And so that experience is really valuable too.
I just so enjoy Dan Quinn because he's just a guy that's been around the NFL long enough to know better. Like, we all get really excited by new shiny stuff, and coaches that have been in it for 20 years just go, yeah, there's a reason we made the move. This could be awesome, but it's not instant defense. Just add Lattimore. They're probably going to mess up a combo coverage. The good news, he's not going to say this part out loud. I will. The good news against the Saints is you're springing free Dante Pettis or Marquez Valdez-Scantling or another guy whose name I forgot. That's the danger level against the Saints. And by the way, even if you spring one of those guys free, and Valdez-Scantling can run. If you spring MVS free, he'll score a 70-yard touchdown on you. Jake Hayner's got to get him the ball, or Spencer Rattler, or a banged-up Derek Carr. I like my chances. Speaking of the Saints, as we move forward in our pick 6 to number 5, Jaden Daniels on the opponent for this week. The first of the final four. First one coming off the bye.
It's gonna be fun. I played football down the road, so I went to a couple of the games. I was blessed to go to a couple of the games, and it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a good challenge. They're a good team. Superdome gets pretty loud, and they're rolling. So we'll go out there. We'll see what we can do and compete against them.
Obviously, they just, he says they're rolling, and you're like, are the Saints exactly rolling? I mean, they won 2 of 3 since they got the new head coach, and they won last week. Last week's game was one of the uglier wins you'll ever see. And if I'm Jaden watching that film, I cannot wait to play this defense because Drew Lock was able to scramble quite a bit. Drew Lock had Giants receivers dropping footballs, and if he can just get some not drops, man, there's air in this defense to run against. There's air in this defense to throw against. This could be a big day for Jaden Daniels and the Commanders' offense. I'm glad he mentioned the LSU thing, too, though, because with the Saints kind of in this weird spot. And by the way, I don't know that there's a fan base. Probably Green Bay. I didn't get to travel to every team in the league. I'd imagine Green Bay's like this. And there's some great fan bases that are like NFL fan bases. But the Saints are like the most college-y fan base, if you will, that I encountered. Their building's loud. It is very distinct. They love a party for any reason, but they just want to have a good time down there. It is a special place to watch a game in the Superdome. But with the Saints being in kind of this weird spot that they're in, and Jaden being an LSU guy, I do kind of wonder what the atmosphere is like, and if there are more away fans or Jaden specifically fans this weekend, because for all of the great stars that LSU has had over the years, they haven't produced a ton of quarterback talent. It's really like Daniels and Burrow. And so what happens when Jaden goes down there if he's playing well? Is there a good – the Commanders fans will also travel. That certainly. I remember some games that I covered down there where the Commanders fans travel pretty well. It's just such a big stadium, and the Saints fans show up, and they have their traditions, and they're singing Yin Yang Twins and doing the whole thing. But it is going to be interesting to see the atmosphere and how Jaden handles, certainly, I'm sure, some ticket requests and being back in the Bayou and the whole deal this weekend. But that dude is about business, so I would be kind of surprised if it's anything but what we'd expect from Jaden Daniels. As for speaking of familiar faces, a familiar face for Jaden down in New Orleans, Chase Young's wearing 99, and he's out on the edge. He's always pretty much on the right edge, by the way, lining up over left tackle, defensive right, for New Orleans, and he's having arguably his best season in terms of pass rush. He has a higher pressure rate this season than any other in his career. He still does a lot of the Chase Young stuff where he is out of gaps, and that is obviously very dangerous against Jaden Daniels, and that is why New Orleans, part of the reason why New Orleans has been horrendous against scrambling quarterbacks this year. But what does DQ see on tape when he watches the former number 2 pick here in D.C.?
Really, from the right side, you see a strong edge setter, a guy who can absolutely bring it, tight end side, open side runs, and then chop club. So, a big athletic player. They've got a nice defensive line with some guys that can move and rush and put them into different locations and Chase right in the middle of all that.
That is the one thing Chase does really, really well. And Granderson, their other DN, also, they set good edges. The bad news for them is, turning things back inside is a nightmare. Because they've got Brzee, they've got our old pal John Ridgway, they got a couple other guys that are their starters, and none of them are very good against the run inside. So, B-Rob on duo, B-Rob inside zone, B-Rob all of the things inside. GT cut it up inside, Wham cut it up inside, whatever. And also the offense or the defensive lines that the Commanders have kind of struggled against are a lot of these penetrating types. They're not really a big penetrating type; they're just small. And so it's going to be interesting to see if Washington can continue to attack the way that they've attacked a ton of teams this year. But the Saints also know that. So what do? Do they make Jaden beat them? Which gets us to the last bit of our pick 6, number 6. Jaden talking for the first time post-bye today about the next step in his progression as an NFL QB.
Continue to go out there and try to contribute and help my team win some football games. I'll say that's the main thing, not just for me, but the whole team is, we got 4 games, 4 games, just go game by game and see what the chips fall.
Anything more specific in terms of goals over these final 4 games?
The team is win. That's the main thing for me. Is like just win. What can I do as a quarterback, as a leader, as get the guys going, and what are we willing to sacrifice? These last 4 games to be able to write our story and for our season.
Jaden right now, second in passing yards amongst rookies. Bo Nix has passed him by a few yards. I think he's third or fourth. I think it's third, but he might be fourth in rushing yards total by rookies, not rookie quarterbacks, of course, rookies, period, overall. So he is still very much in the driver's seat for Rookie of the Year, but he's got one goal, and that is to get the Commanders to the playoffs, one win at a time. That's our pick six biggest storylines of the day, every day at 6 o'clock for the Commanders. When we get back here on the Team 980, another big storyline that wasn't talked about as much today, but I'm sure will be addressed as the week goes on, and Dan Quinn has a better sense of how his team came out of the bye, is how do you get your team to not be flat out of the bye? Logan Paulson played 10 years in the league, and as we were taping our Take Command podcast this morning, he started talking about it in a way I was like, wait a second, we need to talk about this in depth. So you'll hear some of what Logan had to say, and I'll talk a little bit more about why I love the way Dan Quinn is treating this week next on The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. The Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 as well. Real quick, Anthony, before we get into this this Take Command thing. So I'm doing the show from home today, right? And I go downstairs to blow my nose real quick in the break. And as I'm walking back upstairs to my studio, I'm like, what the hell is on the ground out
in our hallway. And it's because during competition Wednesday, when the nose broke off the Groucho Marx glasses of our disguise that we were wearing, our costume that for losing on the Wheel of Mediocre Punishment, I had thrown it over my shoulder as a funny bit. And behind me right here is a staircase. And so it had gone down the stairs and like ping-ponged itself, slinkied itself down the stairs, and there was a nose with hair coming out the side that was sitting by our laundry. I thought about just leaving it there and having Rachel come home and be like, what the hell why is this? I married an idiot. But I decided to be a responsible husband and pick it up instead.
You probably would have started asking questions. Are you cutting people's faces off? Like, what's going on?
Look, this doesn't look real. This is very clearly plastic.
You sure?
I'm very sure.
All right, just making sure.
I'm very sure. Okay. Take Command with the podcast I do with Logan Paulson. And on Thursdays, we preview the upcoming opponent. We do a big old scouting report, the whole thing. And so we actually wound up, just because of some scheduling stuff, taping our preview show this morning. And you can still catch it same time, same place at the Team 980 for the full episode. I'll have a clip up at Craig Hoffman on YouTube. And then obviously wherever you get your podcast in audio form, you can just search for Take Command and it'll be right there. First thing in your feed tomorrow morning, so long as you don't wake up at like 2 a.m. So as we started taping though, and as we started getting into the Saints, and really before we started to get into the Saints, I started talking to Logan about, hey, they're coming off the bye, whatever. And he's like, hey, I think we should actually talk about this more. And so as we started to talk about it, we got into Logan's experience, including with Dan Quinn in 2017 when he was with the Falcons, and how dangerous it can be for teams to come out of the bye flat, which would be pretty bad against a Saints team that's not very good.
What do you think about the kind of the way that different coaches have handled this? And you've obviously played for Dan. So the idea that like, hey, we're just very focused one practice at a time versus, when he gets into that meeting room on Monday coming off the bye, it's, hey guys, welcome back. This is what's in front of us.
Yeah. And I can only speak on what happened in 2017, which was a little unique, right? Like I remember at the time, he was still kind of like be where your feet are. That was a big part of what he did. But I do remember him very early in the season kind of talking about, hey, these are because we didn't start the season well. Like we kind of struggled coming out the gate. And so he'd put up on the board like, hey, these are our remaining divisional games. These are the remaining games, our non-conference games. And we're going to have to like figure it out and turn it on here if we want to make a push for the playoffs, which is what we all want to do. So obviously that situation was a little bit different. And I've had coaches that have done that too. But I also think that this model is of kind of like be where your feet are is maybe the most important one, right? Because we just talked about like, obviously you kind of maybe look past Dallas, the first Dallas game. Like as much as people want to talk about there's 4 games left, you control your own destiny, all those kind of things. I will say this is the most important game you've ever had in your life. And it's against the New Orleans Saints. And say what you want about them, like that is the mindset. And so I do think there is something very clarifying when a coach does that. Hey, I don't care about Philly. I don't care about Dallas. I don't care about, I don't know who's the other game, whatever it is.
Atlanta.
I don't care about those games. This is the one. Because if we don't take care of this one, then there's this crazy undue stress. And I've been a part of teams that have done this too, where you say, hey, here are the 4. We got to win 3 of these. And you lose the first one, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, shoot. Like we got Philly coming in here. We got a rival in Dallas. We got Atlanta who's doing their thing. Like, and then there's this undue pressure on those games, right? Which you kind of fabricated, right? It's this one right now. We got New Orleans. Right. Let's win this one. And then we got the next one. And then that's the most important one. And I do think, because the guys are aware, they know, like they watch enough. They're on their Instagram, they're on TikTok, they're on Twitter enough. They watch enough TV to know that we are in control. The team's in control of their own destiny. And so as a leader, like you don't need to inform them of that. He might, but I don't think you need to. And just say, hey, like this, if we take care of this one, we're at 9. And then he knows they need 1 more. But if you treat everyone like it's a playoff game, like this is the one opportunity, I think that's the way to go about it, right? And so I do think that there's something really, from a player's perspective, very like alleviating about it. It's like, hey, don't worry about that. That's tomorrow. Today is right now. It's New Orleans. Let's get this thing done and get this win. And so I do think if in comparing the two styles, for me personally, I like this one a little bit better. Like, we're not talking 4 games left. This is their winning. No, this is the one. Boom. Let's get it off the schedule and then let's get on to the next.
I 100% agree. And the biggest thing for me with how DQ has handled the bye week stuff and, him getting a little snippy with Scott Abraham the other day, I think it was mostly tongue in cheek, but this is who he's been all season. And I think when you establish who you are as a coach and you talk about identity all the time, you have to live up to that. And I think by and large, Dan Quinn does at an obscenely high rate compared to a lot of NFL coaches who say a lot of stuff and then do different stuff on Sundays. Like, who Dan is in front of us as a media is the same as who he is in front of his team, except for he cusses a lot more because he just knows he shouldn't do that as a professional head coach at the podium all the time. But he slips one in every now and then. So you got that. That's about the only difference. But from a principles standpoint, from a messaging standpoint, you're not going to get, hey, in the meeting room we're saying this, but I'm going to go out and tell the press that. Because that's like, why would you do that? Just be who you are. And that doesn't mean you should give away the entire game plan or whatever. But when you talk about the things that you want to talk about, when you stress them day after day after day, and you're stressing them no matter where your players are, they're hearing the same thing. Whether they're on Instagram, scrolling their feeds, and they see a clip come up, an article gets sent to them by their uncle. Oh, your coach said this. He's like, yeah, this is what he told us in the meeting room. Like, every single thing is the same from DQ. So if he was telling them in the room, oh, man, we got playoffs, like 4 games left, we got to win X out of Y, and then he was coming to the press and he's like, we're just focused on practice today, they know he's full of crap. And he's not. He's a substantive person who I think does think a lot about messaging and thinks a lot about communicating, and that's an essential part of coaching. That's not actually a criticism. It's different than, say, Rivera, who was thinking about the messaging as a political statement and not thinking at all. Like, he was thinking all about the icing, how it was going to look on the outside, and never spend any time on the cake. I think Dan understands that, hey, this is a chocolate cake with chocolate icing, and we're going to be consistent all the way through, and we're going to spend a lot of time on the cake, and then we're going to put the icing on top, and then it's going to be delicious. Now I'm hungry. Fantastic. Overall, though, I think that the other substantive way that they've handled it, the icing is the media talk. But from a cake standpoint, if you will, they had that bonus day on Monday. And a lot of teams have done that, but I think how they treated it is like Dan acknowledging this is a ramp-up day. This is a chance for us to knock the rust off. This is a chance for us to get back to work a little bit and start things, and then we hit the ground running with our same usual thing on Wednesday. For a team that has thrived on rhythm, predictability, habits, that's probably the word I'm looking for. I think approaching it that way is really smart, really good, and hopefully has big-time benefits for the Commanders on Sunday as they get back to it against the New Orleans Saints. Obviously, they got practice tomorrow. We'll hear from Joe Witt and Cliff Kingsbury. You can hear from them in the Pick 6, if not off the start of the show as well. And then on Friday, you'll hear from Quinn again, including some final injury updates. So make sure that you are tuned in with us 4 to 7 every day here on the Hoffman Show. By the way, Friday, we could have an insane guest list on Friday. That is because we are broadcasting live from Radio Row at the Army-Navy game, which is in D.C. this year. There is a ton of... I literally got a list today, Anthony. I don't even know if you're in the loop on this. Sorry. I got a list today, and I was like, here are the 6 people I want. So we're going to have a bunch of stuff potentially on Friday. And one of them is one of our Golden Goose guests. I'll tell you who it is in the break. I don't want to say it out loud. I don't want to jinx it. I don't want to put pressure on anybody. Anthony's like, please go to break. I want to know right now. We got some good college football people, some who have some NFL crossover. I think there's probably a pretty good chance we talk to Joe T. He's obviously always a great guest, but it'd be great if I get to sit down with Joe in person. So we'll have all that on Friday on top of all of our regular Friday stuff. So I'm going to tell everybody what's trending, and then I'm going to tell Anthony what the Golden Goose guest is. And as soon as we get confirmation on that, we will tell you. So make sure you're also subscribed to Hoffman.sports on Instagram, or following me on Instagram. And I'm not using X anymore because it got ruined.
But I am on Blue Sky if you want, at Greg Hoffman, and it's a much more fun place to have football conversations. So join me there. Let's take a look at what's trending and come back with real things real people said into real microphones. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Wrapping up the show. Tomorrow, only till 6:30, we got Virginia Tech Hoops. So make sure you get in while you can. 4 o'clock tomorrow, we get started. We joined, as always, by Dan Pizzuta on a Thursday. Anything else we got cooking for tomorrow, Anthony? We'll hear from Cliff and Joey Jr.
The comments.
Oh, never read the comments is tomorrow.
Got the comments. We'll hear from
Coordinators.
Yeah, the coordinators.
Anything else?
TBD. Yeah, TBD.
TBD.
I think that's a good one.
Yeah. We'll see if we can get some KJ Osborne scouting. I don't know how much good that.
Oh, you'll spin the wheel. Oh no, I lost.
Yeah, you did lose.
I gotta right my wrongs, man. Something ain't right.
I mean, I will give you've climbed back. You've been 2-1 pretty consistently. The problem is,
look, the effort is there, Craig, but the execution, no, sir. I keep coming up short, man. Keep coming up short.
Yeah,
I'll figure it out.
I am gonna laugh when you lose on the Jets this week.
Oh my gosh!
Like we have that hour opener that's like, if in life your fate is on the Bears and the Jets, and the Bears cost you this week.
Oh no way!
And if the Jets cost you next week, I
need to go ahead and put some money down on who the Jets play.
Jacksonville. You're gonna hedge with your money?
Yeah, I'm gonna hedge.
Yeah. Jags won last week. I picked the Jags because I refused to pick the Jets.
The Jags stink though, man. Brutal.
I know. Have you seen the Jets?
I mean, the Jets put up some points last week, though.
They did. Miami's defense is awful.
Yeah? I mean, but the Jags are terrible.
Yeah?
Yes.
I know. The Jets should win that game by two touchdowns.
They should.
Hasn't stopped the Jets from losing to everybody.
Nope.
How many games has Devontae Adams won this year?
0. Did you hear the analogy he used
Is
earlier?
it still really 0?
You said how many has he won?
Yeah. Is it actually 0?
No. I lied. Because they won, they beat the Texans when Garrett Wilson had that crazy one-hand catch. I think it was a Thursday night football game. I know they won that one.
He won, hilariously, one of his wins. He's won 2 games this year. One with Baltimore and one with New York. One was that Houston game. And then one with Vegas, where they beat the Ravens in week 2, which is definitely the weirdest game of the season, results-wise.
Yeah. That one made no sense, actually.
None. So there's all that. Okay, so that's all tomorrow. Anthony will try to rack up another win next week. We'll keep track of that. Of course, we'll pick the games on Friday. A whole bunch of fun stuff planned for that show as we're live at Army-Navy Radio Row. Right now, though, we got some bangers today and real things real people said in real microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5-11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
All right, let's start off with this one that we didn't get to yesterday. This one made rounds on the internet, so you might have seen it. But Mark Gastineau held the NFL sack record for a long time until Michael Strahan broke it. The sack that he broke it on was one where Brett Favre, say it was pretty easy for Michael Strahan to sack Brett Favre on this one. They were friends at the time. And Mark Gastineau's never really been that excited about that. Something he let Brett Favre know a couple of years ago when they were at an autograph convention and ran into each other. Yikes!
I thought we met a long time ago. At least I saw you.
Right.
How you doing?
When you fell down for him. I'm going to get my sack back. I'm going to get my sack back, dude.
You probably would hurt me.
Well, I don't care. You hurt me. You hurt me. You hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
You really hurt me. You hurt me, Brett.
We got to get back to this, Brett. I'm sorry.
In comes the security guy who was looming. Because I think Mark Gastineau was ready to go.
Nah, he really was. I think he was ready to spear him. Actually, sack him.
Like, oh, you want to get sacked one more time? Yeah, well, I got you. It's funny because we always look at Packers fans. We're like, how did you get so lucky to have 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks back to back? Are there 2 worse dudes There are worse dudes, but like what Brett Favre has turned into, welfare scamming people and just the smarminess of him. And then Aaron Rodgers, who just today on Pat McAfee's show on ESPN lamented how people go on ESPN and make it all about themselves.
Wow.
Yeah. Congrats, they were awesome quarterbacks. I would burn a jersey if I had either one of them. Just terrible dudes. Different transition. Midge Purse is a national treasure. If you're not sure who Midge Purse is, she is a forward for the U.S. women's national team. She was, until yesterday, a member of Gotham FC. She is a Silver Spring, Maryland native. She was the MVP of the 2023 NWSL Championship game. I would love for her to wind up playing here with Washington now that she's a free agent. And she's a Harvard-educated savage. She and Allie Krieger, another DMV legend, teamed up to take on a bunch of kids in a pickup soccer game, and this is how it went.
Can Allie and Midge be our team captains?
Actually, you all are going to be playing against Allie and Midge.
Oh!
1-0, Allie and Midge. 2-0, Allie and Midge.
Good game. What was our biggest lesson? Winning is the most important. Yes. And unfortunately, you lost.
She literally got up in front of like 28-year-olds and was like, "Oh, and you lost."
Yeah, that's actually hilarious.
She is a savage. Savage. Bring Midge home. Bring Midge home. Bring Midge home. Okay. Do we have time for the Aaliyah one?
The Aaliyah one is 51 seconds, and sadly,
that's negative,
Craig,
Ghost Rider.
That will not do it.
All right. Here's what I'll tell you. I chatted with Mystics forward Aaliyah Edwards. It was a fantastic chat, wide-ranging on her rookie season, on her off-season to come where she's playing in the Unrivaled League. We had a really funny exchange about traffic in Miami, which is what we were going to play for you, and then I ran out of time because I'm bad at managing the clock. And it's available on the Hoffman W Sports YouTube page. It's also available on the Hoffman W Sports podcast. So if you go to YouTube or you go to your favorite podcast app and you search Hoffman W Sports, you'll find it, and it's great, and you should check it out. That's our show for today. You missed any part of it, search The Hoffman Show in your favorite podcast app, and we'll see you tomorrow back here on the Team 980.